Chapter 12. In the early 1990s, as Grattan was getting married to Nuestra Familia within the prison system, the NF had by then been involved in almost every crime imaginable. From petty thefts, like when future Familiano Rico Smiley Garcia, to support his heroin habit, was arrested for stealing vegetables out of the Salinas vegetable fields and attempting to sell them for half price to local restaurants, to the extreme, like when hardcore Familiano Daniel Negro Mendoza, facing a possible life sentence for an alleged kidnapping, was shot to death in a botched escape attempt in a Monterey County courtroom after attempting to take the bailiff's gun out of his holster. 1990 was off to an explosive start. Gangs, drugs, and violence were an everyday part of street gang members' lives, and they were now doing anything and everything for money. Danger and or disregard for life seemed to have no limit. A few examples of NF's finest at their best follow. In or about January 1990, NF's associate Stephen Spike Valle of Salinas began selling large quantities of marijuana. He saved some of the profits and used them to buy a nice-looking car, a 1990 Nissan Sentra. Valle had gotten a good deal, and with the money left over, he decided to fix up even more by buying custom rims and tires, having it painted, and installing an expensive stereo system. He also insured the vehicle. As time went by, Valle got tired of the car and had it stripped of its parts and sold them for extra money. He decided to defraud his insurance company by pulling an insurance claim scam. He smashed the driver's side window, broke the ignition switch, and removed the stereo system. Then he called the police and reported the car stolen. A few days later, the police located it. Valle was notified and went to the police station to pick up what was left of his vehicle. He filed a stolen car claim with his insurance company. However, the insurance claim was refused because it was deemed to be suspicious, and he was denied reimbursement. He was pissed off. He went to the insurance company to argue with the representatives. While there, Valle acted as if he was being ripped off a second time. Making a scene didn't get him anywhere, and he realized that for his scam to work, he was going to have to do something drastic to make his point. He went to his car, opened the trunk, and returned to the insurance office holding a full gas can. The insurance company representatives thought he was going to burn their building down. However, surprisingly enough, he told them that if they refused to pay his claim, he'd pour gas all over his body and light himself on fire in front of their building. What a dumbass. Of course, they panicked, locked their office doors, and immediately called 911. A few minutes later, Valle actually poured gas all over himself and started yelling and acting like a madman. He pulled out a lighter and walked closer to the building, threatening to light himself on fire. He was putting on a dangerous show when the police finally arrived. They surrounded the bleak building, and a police negotiator talked him into dropping the lighter. Valle was then escorted away from the insurance company, arrested, and allegedly taken to a local psychiatric ward. He was released from the hospital a couple days later, feeling like a complete fool. He was embarrassed because, as a supposed big-time NF associate, he knew he'd have to explain his irrational actions to NF leadership in Salinas. Nevertheless, a scam being a scam, Valle felt he had done what he had to do. Ready to face the music, he returned to his neighborhood to explain his motive. By then, NF members in Salinas had already been informed, and he was now considered unstable. Although NF leaders thought he was insane for pouring gas on himself instead of the insurance company's building, they gave him an A for effort. In a dark humor kind of way, they gave him a pass because they thought what he did was funny. Eventually, a representative of the insurance company contacted Valle and arranged a meeting with him away from their office. The insurance representative explained that the company was willing to pay Valle for the missing items as long as he canceled his policy with them. He agreed and met a representative at a nearby park. He signed a few forms and was given a check. He and the representative went their separate ways, one with a sense of relief and the other with a smile. As far as Valle was concerned, he was fortunate that the only thing that had exploded was laughter. Situations such as these weren't laughing matters, however. As for the NF, it didn't have time for individuals like him. There were many others willing to go out with a bang. Towards mid-1990, one such person was David Gato Ruiz, a Familiano originally from down south that lived in Modesto. Ruiz, a longtime NF member with a reputation as a killer, was allegedly instructed and or ordered to relocate and set up shop in Phoenix, Arizona, where he was supposed to establish a Familiano stronghold, recruit new talent, and put together a few big money-making ventures. This wasn't an easy task for Ruiz, and his alleged stay in Arizona never amounted to much. He did, however, get involved with drugs, a few armed robberies, and a stolen car ring, which ultimately led to his demise. On or about September 9, 1990, it was said that an Arizona Highway Patrol officer spotted Ruiz driving a stolen vehicle. A high-speed chase, wreck, and shootout followed. The NF has an unwritten law that if any law enforcement officer or any other person for that matter shoots at a NF member, the member is obligated to return fire. Ruiz, another casualty for the cause, was allegedly pronounced dead shortly after arriving at Arizona State Hospital with multiple gunshot wounds to his upper torso. In 1991, NF began establishing numerous regimental strongholds throughout Northern California. Goals were set, power moves were made, and NF members were instructed to commit a wide variety of crimes, all across California and in other parts of the country. One of the first noteworthy crimes took place on or about January 22nd, 1991, when the notorious Mateo Rocha and a few other NF members and associates decided to rob Trigger Hill, a local gun shop on Main Street in Salinas. The plan devised by Rocha was to conduct a well-organized burglary, not an actual armed robbery. He had cased the store and was surprised to discover that it seemed to be somewhat of a fortress. There were steel bars on all of the doors and windows, and there were even a few signs advertising a multiple alarm system. All the guns were well secured. The ammunition was hidden out of view, and a silent backup alarm was suspected. The owners were noticeably very security conscious. After observing these details, Rocha concluded the gun shop was burglar-proof. He was ready to abandon his mission because there didn't seem to be any way in and out of Trigger Hill without setting off what appeared to be a very sophisticated alarm system. With a couple of unsolved murders hanging over his head, he definitely had more than one reason for not wanting to get caught. Feeling the risk outweighed the rewards, he decided to look elsewhere. Rocha was quick to notice that there was a thrift store adjacent to Trigger Hill that sold new and used clothing, furniture, and small appliances. He had hit pay dirt. It was an open invitation because the thrift store, with little or no reason for any type of high-tech security system, provided an undetectable way to enter Trigger Hill. Later that evening, Rocha, Miguel Thumper Medina, and a few other NF associates returned to the thrift store. Their timing was perfect. There was no one around, and the surrounding area was dimly lit. Breaking into it was going to be easy, and if they had a key, no alarm, no problem. Once inside, Rocha and Medina found a wall adjacent to Trigger Hill. It didn't take them long to cut a hole in the wall large enough for them to pass through. Upon entering Trigger Hill through the hole, they quickly took every handgun, rifle, and box of ammunition available. They stole 30 to 40 guns, which made their way onto the streets of Salinas at the hands of some very violent criminals. It was a criminal's dream come true, the makings of a neighborhood catastrophe, and a police officer's worst nightmare. No arrests were made. Wherever Rocha went, with guns readily available, trouble was sure to follow. People were shot at, stabbed, or killed. Rocha had absolutely no problem with violence, and he surrounded himself with NF members and associates who were equally violent. One example took place on or about February 5th, 1991, when Rocha and a few other Familianos from Salinas Regiment gathered at Rocha's trailer for a get-together and barbecue that lasted into the evening hours. Everyone was sitting around listening to oldies, having a good time. Family members and friends enjoyed ice-cold beer and carne asada on the grill. As evening turned into morning, the alcohol supply began to run low, and Rocha decided to go to a nearby store to buy more beer. Everyone pitched in, and he pocketed the money and got into his black Cadillac. Joseph Joe Padilla, a Norteño gang member, volunteered to ride with him, which was fine with Rocha since he and Padilla were good friends and had known each other for years. After pulling out of his driveway, Rocha decided to ride around his neighborhood to see who was where and to make sure that everything was as expected in their barrio. He then drove by Closter Park, cruised the boulevard, and arrived at the San Miguel Mini Mart. He parked off to one side of the market's lot, turned off the motor, and counted the money he had collected. Knowing how much they could spend, he and Padilla got out of the car and went into the store, discussing what they were going to buy. Padilla picked up a couple cases of beer. Rocha paid the cashier, and they returned to their car. Once outside, both noticed that a car full of sureños from a rival neighborhood called the Vagos had arrived while they were in the market. These sureños were drinking alcohol and getting a little loud. Rocha knew trouble was only a few words away. One of the sureños noticed Rocha, a gang-related comment was made, and an argument ensued. The sureños were preparing to get out of their car when Padilla pulled out a brand new 9mm pistol and started firing into it. The sureño driver, Stefan Orozco, was hit badly and hurt. Rocha and Padilla jumped into the Cadillac and sped off. The police arrived at the scene of the shooting moments later. They were given a description of the car and the shooter and a partial license plate number. The information was relayed to a police dispatcher who alerted officers that there was a report of shots fired. An all-points bulletin APB was issued for Rocha's vehicle. Within minutes, Rocha and Padilla were pulled over and ordered out of the car. Padilla jumped out and took off running. The gun was found under the passenger seat, and Rocha was arrested. Padilla was arrested a couple days later, and both were charged with assault with a deadly weapon. While at the Monterey County Jail, Padilla admitted that he was the shooter and attempted to have the charges against Rocha dropped. Padilla subsequently pleaded guilty to assault with a deadly weapon, and he was sentenced to serve 7 years in a California state prison. Rocha was charged with being an accessory to an assault with a deadly weapon, with an additional charge of street terrorism. He was sentenced to serve 4 years in a California state prison. He later appealed his conviction, and the street terrorism portion of his sentence was overturned. Rocha got lucky. He ended up with a 2-year prison sentence, and the murders he had committed remained unsolved.